I believe I accessed that first through the Michigan Community Service Commission when that was started. And sitting on that board, I became familiarized because there was such a great working relationship with MNA, Michigan Nonprofit Alliance. And at the same time, I believe I was just about to go on the board of the Council of Michigan Foundation. So those three organizations work so well together, and I think it's a wonderful model of collaboration that we need to have in the future of government, nonprofit, and private sector working together.
Did you know what you were getting yourself into, Julie?
I had no idea. Most of the time, it's like I had no idea. I really feel like in the end they're going to say on my gravestone it's going to be. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but actually I walked through. It was a time when I think volunteerism was really coming to the forefront. I know that it started a long time before with George Romney, but actually I was reading my father's biography, The Quiet Diplomat, and in fact, I think it was Nixon asked my father to run the National Commission for Volunteerism, and Dad said, George Romney, this is a really good idea for you, why don't you do this? And so that's how it started. And then my father just always felt so strongly about that. And he was the original person to start the Torch Drive campaign in Detroit years ago. It's a Midwestern value, I really think. And you just do it because it's the right thing to do. I mean, it's really hard for me to say when did it begin, because you did ask me that, when did it begin and who was there? And it's hard because I grew up in a home where my father, that was just something that he did. I used to, the excuse I gave myself when people, would say, why isn't your father here? And I'd say, I gave him to the world, like it was my choice. It wasn't my choice, but that's really what he did. He went off doing good for others, and how as a child can you be upset? I remember aptly that when he was in his mid-50s, and I wasn't very old at the time, he said, I've made enough money. Now is the time for me to give it back. And to me, that is the great example of servant leadership. So having grown up in that, I went to a school that did that. I remember doing my first, sort of package for care when I was 4 years old. I didn't know that there were people that didn't have the same thing I did. And I think it's the ability to step out of where we are, step out of our shoes, and to step into the shoes of other people that maybe don't have as much as we do. That was my father. And then as moving through and getting into the circles of, and my mother as well, being introduced to those circles, and then being introduced to people like Ranny Reeker, who was really, I consider, my mentor and got me on the CMF board, and Dottie Johnson, who has been a great mentor to me, and all the other people, from Joel to Bill Richardson to Michelle Angler. I mean, look at all the people in the different sectors that want to come together. And not many people today can put aside their egos for the greater good. As I spoke before about the family foundations, all those skills I looked during the CMF, I brought to the family foundation, sort of that idea of looking for the greater goal and how can we put our own needs aside. So we have that as our intrinsic mission. We actually call it our intrinsic mission. That's what Dad wanted us to do. And actually, when Dad passed and he endowed the Fisher Foundation with a great deal of money, and my mother and there's 5 of us in my generation sit on this board, he wrote us a letter, and he said, I believe in all of you and your philanthropy, and my oldest sister is into Jewish cause. My sister Mary Fisher is an AIDS activist. My brother and I are into strengthening youth and families in need, and my younger sister is an Egyptologist. He said, the only thing I ask of you is that you come to consensus. And I'd say, one thing I've learned in Michigan more than anything is that this is a privilege to do this work. And actually, this is not our money. This is everybody's money. And hopefully, we'll measure up enough to know that we've done the right thing. Well, it's a Jewish value. My father's Jewish. And he's first generation of immigrant parents that came through Ellis Island. And his father was a pushcart peddler that just started pushing his cart from, in Pittsburgh. I think that's where my father was born. And they ended up in a small town in Ohio called Salem, one of 5 Jewish families. And but they always had the blue box. That's what they called it. And they always gave money, put money into this. No matter how little they had, they always had enough to help. So that kind of ethic of service was really sort of, that value is very much part of what they call tzedakah. and you just took care of your neighbors. And I think that's a lot of where it came from. And then my father really, he went to Ohio State on a football scholarship and did so well that he realized that he wanted to give back too. As I said before, he retired when he was 50 to do that. So he really felt strongly about that. And my mother, the same thing.
What were his philanthropic interests?
He believed he was loyal to his office was in Detroit till the day he died. He was loyal. He was loyal first and foremost. He says you can't help your nation or you can't help anyone else till you help the people, the community you live in. And that's where it always started. That community was Detroit. That's why he helped start New Detroit after the riots, realizing there were problems. He helped start the Community Foundation. He started the first torch drive campaign. You know, the list goes, New Detroit, Renaissance, which brought together the business leaders. What could they do? So, and that's where it started. And I think, and then he became involved in civic life, so business, politics. And and then he became, it's interesting because someone told him when he was really young, he said, you want to have impact, become a Republican Jew. And I think he was the only one when he probably first started out. And so he had the ability to work with other people, but he was a great listener too. So I think that's where a lot of that came from. And my mother she has a really big heart, and she believes you can't hate a whole group of people, that everyone's deserving of care and love. Not necessarily, I would say children's issues. So what happened is I moved away at a very young age, and I ended up in Florida, and I became involved with our women's division of Jewish Federation. And when I was in my 20s, I guess, I was the campaign director. I was head of the campaign, which is very unusual, and I always say it's because they didn't have many people down there. But and then when I moved to a very small town in Florida, I had the honor of being head of our campaign for the United Way. And it was very much like Michigan. It was small, you could get things done, you know. So those two sort of, you know, the Jewish ethic of service and the United Way being a great model of how you raise money and, you know, bringing everyone into the fold, you know, have really helped. And then when I moved to Michigan, I wanted to do something that would help children because, you know, how you have these life-altering moments. So I moved back to Michigan. I had left Coleman Young was there. You know, 15 years later, I moved back. Coleman Young's still there. And I remember reading, now today this would not be extraordinary, but then it was. And it said, on the front page of Detroit News, it said, 49% of children live under the poverty level. Now, if that's not bad enough, I'm reading the paper in a separate article, not even connected to that. It said $1.3 million worth of WIC funds, which are the Women, Infant, and Children Feeding money from the federal government, were returned to the federal government because they weren't administered. And I got angry. There's nothing like a good bit of anger. And I realized, you know, children, they're all our children, and they don't deserve to go hungry. And that's a basic need. And so with a friend of mine who had sat on the Ruth Mott Fund because she saw how small amounts of money on the grassroots level can make a big difference. So we came together and we formed Love Light, which really was to help at-risk youth and their families. And I really felt that people wanted to help, but they just didn't know how. You know, and we had, in the early 90s, we had become very disconnected from seeing the person we help. Today, that's not the case, but then it was. And I really feel like people needed that heart connection. So I really felt if we educated people, and I didn't want to ask them for any more money because I was sick of asking people for money. I felt they'd go in the other direction. If we educated, if we found the programs we could have fiduciary control over, that they would help, and they did. So that's what we did, and we did a lot of great work, and we realized the power of collaboration at the time. We realized how to put our egos aside. Working in Detroit was a very interesting experience. I really had a lot of, I feel like I got my PhD in community organizing. But people do want to help. And you know, it's just that they didn't go below 8 Mile. So we wanted to start with children and hunger as an issue. And we couldn't find anything. You know, we found out that the public schools were supposed to have a breakfast program, but they didn't administer it in all cases. We didn't want to attack the public school system. So, excuse me. So we found an organization in Wayne County called Starfish Family Services. And they we're a very wonderfully based, community-based organization. And my friend had had a lot of experience she's a chef and a gardener. So she thought, let's teach kids how to grow. Let's not just feed them, let's teach them how to grow. And we also knew that in the summer, the monies ran out from school feeding. And we didn't want these kids to go hungry. And we had done all this research and we found out that they would. So we started a summer camp called the Grow and Learn Summer Camp. And I think at the time there were 60 people. And my mother, she asked me what I was doing, and I told her, and she gave us half the money, which was really nice. And we started this program. And what we found was these kids didn't know where carrots were grown, right? But and we brought in, all these different organizations to help them with activities. But their favorite time was in the garden. And so that whole thing started, and now I think there's 300 or 400 kids going to this camp. So it was very exciting because as it went on, they taught them, sort of life skills and how to, anti-bullying programs and everything. But in the beginning, that was really worthwhile to see that could work. Oh, one other program. I have two others. Can I tell two others? One is so we're at this school. We got into a school in the city of Detroit. The mayor got us in there. And I was sitting at a table, as my life is. I'm sitting at a table. I was on Children's Hospital Board in Michigan. I'm talking to the dentist across the table. So I said, Dr. Delaney, tell me what dental care is like in the city of Detroit. He goes, you don't want to know. He goes, this 25% of the population has 75% of the decay. He said, it just cost a hospital $240,000 for 3 cases. One had an abscess. I had to take out her eye. The other one ended up with a brain tumor, and the other one I had to take out all the permanent teeth. Now, you can do that and give them dentures, but they're going to grow out of them and not have teeth. And he said, I just would like to get in there and seal their teeth. I said, I can't believe you can't do that. And he said, oh, well, I can't find a school to do this. And he said, I got a middle school, but you really need to get them in the early years. I said, we have a school. Let me ask the principal. But we have a school. So we ended up doing a model dental program where they bring a mobile dental unit in there. They'd use dental students, and they would seal and screen their mouths and seal their teeth. And it has been shown it was $15 a mouth to do that. And you know how much it cost? And we didn't have all the funding for this program, so we went to Kellogg. They gave us funding, and so did Blue Cross Blue Shield. And after this program, we did 3 years of this program. We did all 800 kids in the school. And we did, sort of like dental care and for the parents too. And after this was over, I said to Dr. Delaney, Dr. Delaney, isn't this great? It's not even that expensive. We can get this done. What we need to do is go and embarrass the healthcare organizations in Detroit to help us do this. He goes, I didn't want to tell you. He said, we had 60 healthcare organizations around the table. And he said, we had all the money, but nobody who could agree who would be the fiduciary. And so that was a little upsetting. So that was, those kinds of experiences were wonderful.
You have another one.
What? If you don't mind.
No, I don't mind.
We were doing, and we also, as part of Love Light, we involved our children in Love Light Kids. And we tried to do it in a way that was equitable. Because you didn't want these we're the rich kids giving to the poor kids. That creates all sorts of problems. And it's not the value we wanted to have. So we wanted to do programs of service where they would serve together, right? So we did community cleanup. So we were in the school, cleaning up around the school, a very decimated area. There were no social services within walking distance. 67% of the kids had single parent. It's just really bad statistics, right? So we're in there with the kids in the neighborhood, cleaning up and weeding and painting the bathrooms, whatever. And I said to the assistant principal, I said, what if you could have anything for the school? Because we had done in-class collections for books and everything. She said, what I'd like is a playground. She said, when I was a young child, my mother worked as a maid. I was living in Harlem. And my brother was in trouble, and my father was on the railroad, so I never saw him, but my favorite time was on the swing. And she said, these children have never seen a swing. There are no playgrounds left in Detroit. And she said, and I'm like, okay, we'll build it. So what we did is we worked with another organization, the Pistons Palace Foundation. They came in and helped do community building because we found that the model, the more research we did, we realized that if the community does not embrace the playground, it is destroyed. So we worked with the school system. We worked with Pistons Palace Foundation. The parents planned the playground. They said, we want a walking track with the baskets and playscapes so they can get healthier and everything. And so that's great. So now we're going to get the land. All this vacant land behind the school, all abandoned. So I went to the city of Detroit and said, we'd like to purchase this land from you. How much will it cost? Oh, we can't sell you that land. Why not? Well, the land is going to be used for a community building. And we knew that would never happen. So my husband got them to lease the land to us for $1 a year for 10 years. And we built the playground. The model of funding we used, I really wanted to do this model of funding where we got, the families had to support it, the local community, business, foundations, and private sector. And that's what we did. And the basketball team went, and let me just say this too, I didn't explain that these kids played outside in the cold, and there was one basketball net outside, but it had a gravel court. You know how long that would last. And these kids went on to become regional champs. So and that park is still there. I started at a very young age, to the point where Caroline, I think she was like 12, her 12th birthday, she said, Mom, I don't need anything, let's collect cans of food for Detroit, you know. So it should be so ingrained, hopefully, that it's not something we do, it's who we are. And the other thing is it can be fun. And service, that's why I think service is the great leveler of society. You know, everybody can do service. You know, a blind person can give service, a person who has nothing, and it's very empowering. I see it most dramatically with middle school and high school children who really are sort of searching for their way and not feeling part of anything. They're involved in a service movement, and right away they have leadership. And this we most dramatically saw with some of the work we did with the League and now Generation On, especially in these at-risk communities where these kids feel, oh my God, I can have a difference on people's lives, and a positive one. So I hope that my children will see the value of that, and hopefully it's deeply ingrained enough, and that it's something that they make part of their everyday life. It's, you know, sort of how can we be of service? It is a compassion or a generosity. You call it the state of generosity. It's just something that you do. I mean, it's just who we are.
Do they have specific interests?
They do. My daughter, Caroline, is now, we turned Love Life Foundation into a private women's fund now, and she's chairman of it. And she also serves on the Fresh Air Fund board. She serves on Kips Bay Boys and Girls Club board in New York City. My son, our eldest son, Casey, helped build a high school for a private high school. He does a lot of work in Stuart, Florida, where he lives. And Tony is also involved he likes the environment. And so I think as they come along, we're dying to do this, but I will give you a story. My mother has set the most dramatic sort of example for this. A couple years ago, she wanted the entire family to get together. I think it was like 40 of us. The youngest is my grandchild, Mac, who's 6, all the way up to my mother. And she wanted them to get together. And she wanted to we have a family meeting. And she wanted them to hear how we do our work, or not. And she wanted them to, and she wanted them to go on site visits of some of our projects in Detroit. Because, and rightly so, she didn't feel that they had been there and seen that, and they hadn't, even kids living in Detroit. And she wanted to speak to them about the importance of service. And the other thing she did, which was most dramatic, is she said, I believe enough in them that I want to give them $100,000 that any child between the ages of 13, well, 18 voting age, 18 and the eldest, who was 50, can decide how to give away that money based on on our 4 giving areas. And they can do it any way they want. And they do such a great job, and they meet every year. They're very serious about, and they meet every month. They actually, I think, do more calls than we do. And my daughter and David Sherman, who's my eldest sister's eldest son, are really involved. All the kids, a lot of the kids, and they come in and out, but they're really serious about this because they feel that so much of how they related to their grandfather too, and my mother. My mother's very engaged in her philanthropy too. So that's something that it's already starting to travel down.
And as you said before, it doesn't matter the zeros, people could do do it with $20
That's
with
it.
their kids. Yeah.
And my mother, you know, so my mother always says, and be flexible in your giving, you know? And it's important for you. She always gave us the ability to understand what it was like to live in someone else's shoes, you know? And that's how you learn. So if I'm saying to my kids, what would I like them to learn? To be bold in their giving, to be collaborative. And I always say, you know, do what you can. There's a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt that I love. It says, do what you can with what you have where you are. You know, so anyone can do it. And to really look at this as part of who you are and how you live your life.